B1's got 4 engines on it, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah. So
can't
it's like
remember that.
those 4 engines that are the same or similar to the F-15 working a lot harder to
Yeah.
move it versus the 2 are on the F-15.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, as much as it is exciting when I'm standing underneath the planes when they're flying over my head, it's still a little jet. I like the bombers, like the B-52, the B-1. I've never stood below the B-2. I've not had the privilege yet, but to me, still, those heavy bombers, or even the C-17 or the C-5, like those heavy aircraft, th they just sound amazing. It's just you can't not fall in love with that. And so as much as people get excited by the little jets, I'm like, "Yeah, but they're a little they're a mosquito to me." And I'm gonna insult some people, I know, I don't really care, but when you're working around a heavy lift aircraft, there's a much different respect level because it just is awe-inspiring. And so
Uh-huh.
I'll say I regret, all the years I lived in Abilene around Dias, and I kinda took for granted that that plane was flying, and now I'm thinking, "Man, I wish I could go out and plane spot that thing every single day." But they also don't do flybys at Dias, unless it's an air show, and they gotta get special permission. But I just love the sound of the B1, and now that it's in the news more, it's interesting to hear everybody around me start talking about it, and I'm thinking, "Man, all these years, nobody talked about the B1, and now all of a sudden it's on everybody's Instagram feed, everybody's talking about it," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, we worked around that plane, a lot of people worked around it, no one talked about it, up until what is it, when they Afghanistan, the first, time they went overseas in 2002. So I think that's when it really started becoming 2000, yeah, 98, 2002. I'm sorry, my dates you go too far back, your dates get confusing, but,
Uh-huh.
um, like, everybody right now at what is it, Lake and Heath, where it's, like, taking off all the time, and they're these amazing pictures. I'm so jealous in a good way. I want
Uh-huh.
that plane and my camera a little more than I have it right now. So, that's why I was really excited when you mentioned it was up near you because I'm like, "Man, I probably sound crazy that I'd drive 6 hours to see the B1, but it's not crazy. I wanna see it, and I already scouted out spots I could potentially watch it take off from. I thought, "Man, he said here." I'm like, "But what about this area and that area?" Looking at where I could go to get pictures of it. So, but yeah, I would say you guys on the 53, like what you just said, you're like, "Yeah, I wanna hear something heavy. I wanna see something
Uh-huh.
that's kick-ass." But there's a huge level of respect, and it also requires respect given to it. It breaks a lot. It's like this, that, and the other, but you gotta commit to it, and that makes it more rewarding. I don't know, I don't so it's
Uh-huh.
funny, I got to sit in an Apache the other day, and the crew chief, he was a cool dude. I'd met him, we all had met him out here plane spotting, and so I went and sat in this Apache, and I'm looking around like, "Dude, this plane's clean." It's a helicopter, right? He's like, "Yeah, they're pretty new." He's like, "I guess the B1 is clean." I said, "No." And he kinda laughed. He goes, "Oh." And then he said, "I'm sorry for the hydraulic fluid." I was like, "Dude, you don't have to, there's a little puddle on the ground that's like the size like this big. You're good, I promise." And I told him, I was like, "If you ever get a chance to see the B1," I'm like, You'll never apologize for hydraulic fluid ever again, but it's unusual for me to see a clean airplane. I wanna see, like, it bleeding. I wanna see, like it's making me pay the price for working on it. Um, so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for the bigger planes. They make me happy. Even though the little ones are cool,
Uh-huh.
they zip around, they take off, they shoot up in the air upside down, that's cool. Well, the B-1 can roll over too. I don't know if you've ever seen it do that, but it can roll over. It kinda pisses crew chiefs off, but it can. Yeah, so when I got to Dias, I remember I had been there not very long, and I don't even know if the pilot was supposed to do this or not, but they took off, and they just rolled it upside down like that, and I'm like, "Is it supposed to do that?" And all of us are like, "Oh, shit," like, the crew chiefs are gonna be mad when that guy gets back. I don't know if he
Uh-huh.
should or not, but that was the most impressive thing I've seen, is it roll over on
Uh-huh.
its I guess it can. I can't when it rolls over, it kind of banks itself out, you know what I mean? It doesn't completely
Uh-huh.
go full roll, but it's
Yeah,
pretty
I
neat.
was actually surprised the other day seeing the B1 take off, and to my knowledge, it's the first time I've ever seen one take off. Um, and once it got a little bit into its ascent, it pulled upward pretty aggressively, and I was like, wow, like that's a
It's
pretty aggressive rate of climb for such a big plane there. And like I said before we were recording here, is like being a 53 guy, of course, growing up going to air shows, I did enjoy jet noise until you have to work next to, when I was in Iwakuni, having to work next to a squadron of F-18s, and it's like, I really don't need that. But it
it's
was,
a that it's like a noisy all the time, and you're like, "Ah,"
yeah,
but
yeah. Um, but yeah, it was a nice, deep, satisfying jet noise, and I, as I told you, even though it's 53 guys, working out of my hangar, probably half dozen of us went like running out of the hangar to go see, it take off, and we were like, man, that's cool. And like one of the guys there, I think it's funny, I don't even know. He's on the Marine Corps side, whereas we're civilians. But I think he
Mhm.
might be our maintenance chief, a gunny, Stewie. He's gonna know that if I mention this, that I'm talking about him. So anyway, he was like, "Yeah, guys, I got to go over there and like take a tour on it earlier."
What?
Um, so and
Yeah.
he was all geeked out, and he's a crew chief and everything, and
Yeah.
usually we're not too excited about other stuff like that. But he was like, "Yeah, it was really cool." Whoever walked me around, inside of it, and said it was made in 1983, because I was saying, this girl Laura who just took this really cool picture of a Condor's, the 464 painted
Yeah.
plane. She was a hydraulics mechanic on the B1, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh, just cool connection that all of a sudden this lands here shortly after I get in touch with you. And when I mentioned that, a few of the guys there knew those pictures of yours that I was referring to right
Good.
away.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think I had appreciation for the 53, especially when I walked through it last year at Oceana. On Friday, they opened it up for the school kids to come through, and so I was there on Friday, and I got to walk through it, and I recognized all those smells. I was like, "Oh, man," and the thing's leaking and sticky and sliding, and I'm thinking, "This is awesome, actually, I kinda like this." And then everybody on the aircraft were like, I think they might have thought it was a little odd that I said that until I said, "Well, I worked on B1, so if it's not leaking," you're like, "Oh, maybe it's not flying." It needs to leak, and
Uh-huh.
today, everybody's kinda laughing at me on the observation deck at the airport because they thought it was weird that when an F-18 came out here and they landed for a couple hours, I didn't care about the buttons in the cockpit. I went around the back and looked at the hydraulic fluid coming out the area where the tail hook was. And then I'm asking the pilots, "What's the hydraulic pressure on the tail hook?" And they really didn't know, and I thought, "I don't care about the buttons, I wanna see what's up inside this plane." So I grabbed some hydraulic fluid, and I was like, it was sticky, and then I knew it wasn't really leaking, it was just like a residual. And my everybody's laughing at me today like that was stupid, and I'm like, "No, y'all are ridiculous 'cause that's cool, that's what you want." You're like, you wanna see the nuts and the bolts and what's working, but, um, I liked I like the smells around the airplanes. It's telling you who it is, It's not, like, clean and pristine um but I appreciate the 53 because to me that represented the heavy lifter like the B-1 does, You've got
Uh-huh.
heavy bombers, the B-52 and the B-1, and I'm like, they're old, and they break, but they have character, and they make you pay for working on them. They're not easy.
Uh-huh.
Like the Harrier it's going away, but it's hopefully not going away, It makes you pay, you earn your right to fly that thing. Um, and so I love being around
Yeah,
air.
you have to love them. You
Yeah.
have to love them deeply and pour in that love to them on a routine basis, or they're
Yep.
not going to love you back.
No, and you have to be willing to be broken and, like, by them, like, you're bashing your knuckles, you're like, "God, like, that hurt," or getting showered by all the hydraulic fluid or shocked with the electricity, I don't know. But I have a little issue with all these clean, pristine airplanes that fly by wire. I'm not interested in that. And I have a sneaky suspicion the pilots aren't either. I think they like those planes that they've got to become like, the plane is a being that they get to talk to and curse at and kick it in the ass to fly it, and there's a level of like expertise that comes with that, you know? You only get better through being challenged, and when you got something flying itself, it's like, you're in cruise control on a car, like, what's the point? So,
Uh-huh.
I don't know,
Uh-huh.
I'm speaking for pilots, I should not do that, but I wanna see a jet that makes me earn my keep on it, you know, and I'm glad you
Uh-huh.
see the B-1. I'm glad you got to experience that, like, that deep, heavy, like, roar where it's like it makes a difference, and I'm proud to work on it. I'm proud to be a part of that community, like, you're probably proud to be a part of the 53 community because I love all the memes that I see. The 53, you should be able to carry your own weight, and you're like, "Yeah, that's funny." But I don't know, I really wanna get more pictures of the B-1. I wanna be able to stand underneath it while it's coming at me at almost Mach 1, like, I wanna capture that shot as it's, like, punching out over top of me. I almost got it last year at Dias, but I was probably where I shouldn't have been, but when they rerouted us off base, they basically have this dirt road that goes right behind the runway, and I'm like, "Well, nobody's paying attention," so I walked along the tree line, and I saw the B-1 coming, and I thought it was gonna come over the runway, and it actually came over the visitor, like, there's a taxiway and then there's the runway, and I thought it was gonna come over the runway, so I positioned myself where it would come right over me so I could try to get pictures of it. It came over the taxiway, so I couldn't run fast enough to get over to, like, literally probably 200 yards away, and I'm like, "Are you flipping kidding me right now?" But it came over, and I just saw this triangle, and it's just silent, and it's tiny. I mean, you saw the videos I sent you. It's just coming in, and it's hard to see it. And then it just like, pow, and it's gone. And I don't think I had my shutter speed at 8,000, which is what I should have had it at, and 1/8,000th of a second, I think that's what but it was just coming so fast, and I got it coming past me, which is kinda surreal too, because 'cause I'm, like, from here to there, and this where I shouldn't have been, but probably won't repeat that ever again, but,
Uh-huh.
it's neat to experience that power and know, like, that big of an airplane, that heavy, can go that fast, and it can turn on it, like, the horizontal stabilizers, they split, so when it's turning, they're not normal, they're gonna split, and they're gonna just be able to just really turn quickly. So it
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know you didn't know that. Yeah, they do.
Ah, that sounds
So
pretty wild.
I don't know if anybody has anything online that they've captured while it's doing it. I don't even know if I have it in the videos I got, but yeah, if it wants to turn really quickly, it's gonna split the stabs, and it's neat.
Wow.
So, it doesn't have, ailerons, it has flaps and slats, and so those, you don't have anything sticking up off the wing when it's, like normal airplanes will. So, it's got the
Uh-huh.
flaps, the slats, it has the stabs, and that's about it, and it has 3 rudders, so it's got quite a good maneuverability, when you think about a heavy
Uh-huh.
aircraft like that, so
Yeah.
and it's hard sometimes, like
It's funny.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
It's funny too, I guess, jumping back, but it's funny that you mention, you want to see the aircraft that are actually leaking and dirty and all that stuff. And, talking to the guys who I work with now on the 53 kilo, which of course is the fly by wire. Um, it's like occasionally when there is some fluid somewhere for whatever reason, it's like, oh, this is like a real 53 now. Like we actually have fluid to clean up on this thing.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just so weird that, um, yeah, interacting with an aircraft and like watching it fly, and all that it's just like, this thing hovers so smoothly now. I mean, I'll just stand out behind our shop, when it's hovering some
mhm,
days or whatever, and it's just like bam, and it's just like totally stable, because it's got all these modern technology and everything keeping it that way. And I saw a pilot recently in a video saying that, it requires a whole lot less, input from you,
Hmm.
to your point. And yeah, if you're a good pilot on a 53 Delta or 53 Echo, you're a really good pilot. Whereas like it's
Yeah.
easier to look good on the 53 Kilo these days.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna have to pay attention to that whenever I go watch, because we get the kilos coming through here. We also get I don't know a lot about, so forgive me, I don't know a lot about the 53s, but the one before the K model is what? The Echo?
That's the Echo. And the
Okay.
easiest way to um, notice the difference on that, I would say, are the auxiliary fuel tanks.
Okay.
Those are the ones that look like bombs that are attached,
Yeah.
to the sponsons on there, whereas now those are gone
Okay.
off of the Kilo.
Okay. Well, like, as far as it flying, I'm wondering, like you said, you notice it being very more stable. So now I'm gonna watch the older model and see, like, huh, especially when I go up and I'm on, what is the air station up there, it's like I'm able to they're kinda bobbing and weaving and doing their thing, so it'll be interesting to watch the differences between the 2 planes, like, huh, which one seems a little bit more like it's doing a little more movement than the other one, you know? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It's I'm finding all these things interesting. I just like watching them. I like watching them. I like to see what they do. And, so I realized something the other day. Remember in the last podcast, I said something about the extra rotor noise or the different level of tone. I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, I think that's the tail rotor." But because I'm not used to, because you have the main, what do you call the main rotor on the top? I guess that's what you call it.
Just the main
Yeah, yeah.
rotor. Yeah.
But the 2 sounds that I was hearing was the cadence and the differences of the sounds of both of those working together, and I think that's what I was hearing,
Uh-huh.
and now it's interesting. I think I figured it out when I was listening to one of the other the Blackhawks the other day. I was up at on a army installation, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that's the same sound. Ah, that's probably the tail rotor." So the top one and the tail.
Uh-huh.
Um So, yeah, I had to figure that out on my own. Like, "What is that?" But
Uh-huh.
it's funny because I feel like sometimes I'm learning all this language of these different airplanes and what they sound like and what they are, and, I've got the one I worked on for a while, but it's also trying to jog my memory from how many years ago was it? I got out in '02, so it's like trying to remember, oh, man, like, thinking back, like, I used to know a lot about the thrust per engine and things like that, but still doesn't take away my love for it and missing just that power. Like, when the B1 takes off and, like, when the 53, you're like, "Man, it's gonna kick some ass." Like, there's just no other sound. You're gonna turn around and look at it and be in awe.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm really glad you got that experience. I hope it's not gone. I hope you get to see it again, you know,
Yeah.
sooner
Yeah.
than later. But, yeah.
Um, you know, speaking of the differences in the sound and all that stuff, I think there's one thing with the Kilo, and you have to have like a really sharp kind of CH-53 familiar ear to it. But the anhedrals, which I think are the same thing as the ailerons on the wings on a plane, but the end of the blades, they tilt down on the 53 Kilo, which I'm sure
Okay.
provides more lift. It's kind of
Mhm.
keeping that pocket of air underneath the blades rather than just letting it slide out. So I think that at a distance, that actually muffles a little bit of the sound, whereas the Echo is going to sound a little bit noisier at a distance.
Okay.
However, the what one of the differences that I've noticed is the gearbox whine from the main gearbox
Mhm.
is a really distinctive. It sounds like a high strung gearbox whine. Say if you hear um, like certain race cars and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you can hear a really loud gearbox whine.
Okay.
That's what I hear out of this, which was when it first hit me. I was like, that's cool. Uh,
And that's on the
and
key
yeah, being able to,
that's on the
yeah,
one.
that's on the Kilo. It's a very distinctive gearbox whine that it's got. Um, and yeah, I think that when the wind or when the air hits them right, you can hear the tail rotor
Mhm.
for sure. But there's something to do with that. I think you were talking about the 53 typically has kind of like a grumbling noise, and then there was like a
Yep.
type of
Yep.
thing that you're hearing. I forget what that is. Coming from the Delta world, I know that if you're hearing something like that, it's a it's it's likely a blade pocket. Uh, Delta blades are different from the Echo blades, which are different from
Mhm.
the Kilo blades, which is, so it was typically like a little bit of the corner of the metal would peel back, like the skin on the blade would peel
Oh,
back,
okay.
and that's when you would hear it on the Delta. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is on the Echo, but it's
Mm.
something to do with the blades on there because at that frequency too, because I think the rotor head, main rotor head spins at 179 RPM on an Echo, so you're hearing it, you know, 1/7 of 179, whatever it is, which is why
Yeah.
it's more distinctive,
Yeah, yeah.
um, like that. But just wild the different sounds and everything you become accustomed to and appreciate with these things.
Yeah, it's funny, at my house right now, basically right over the way is an island, and the stallions fly up and down that all the time, and I'd be sitting at my house, and they're a good mile out, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a stallion, that's a 53," and it's, like, going straight up the ocean, and I know it, and I love it, and they don't always pop up on ADSB, so, I can sit here at night and know I hear something out there over the ocean, and it's really a neat sound. It's a heavy, dull, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a beautiful sound.
Uh-huh.
And the same thing with the V-22s, I can hear them coming, but what I love about rotors, I love hearing the change in when it's switching, when it's landing. Just the tilt of the rotors, or like with the V-22s, they just change their direction, and it's such an interesting sound of I love it. I love that change of I don't even know what to say it is, just the sound change.
Uh-huh.
Intonation, I
Yeah,
guess,
like you
not
get
the
the
right.
blade slap and
That's what it is, the blade
um
slap.
uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
you can hear that, even when they're landing the 53s out there at the airport, you'll hear it, it'll echo way across miles, and it's like, "Yes, that's what I wanna hear." I wanna hear more than
Uh-huh.
a quick pop of a fighter jet. You know what I mean? Like, poof, it's
Uh-huh.
there, it's gone, and then you're like, I waited for 3 hours for that," like,
Right.
versus waiting around for hours to just this nice graceful entrance and exit of a helicopter or even the B-1, it takes a little while. It goes and it goes and it goes, and then it's like, it's gone, but you still hear it. So, I
Uh-huh.
like sound because 'cause I'm a musician, I like sound.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is good. So, as long as I can keep my hearing a little longer and make sure I wear hearing protection when the jets fly over me, I gotta remember to do that because it's painful.
Uh-huh.
Painful lesson, but, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Well, awesome.
if you ever make it down here
Mm-hmm.
and we get some things coming in, it's kinda cool to stand underneath them depending on the runway they're coming in. It's, like,
Uh-huh.
right overhead. Yeah. I think I've got some F-35 shots I'll hold off on posting for a while because I can get right up in really close shots up inside the engine, and it's like, "Yeah, maybe I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of operational security issues," but it's neat.
Uh-huh.
It's fascinating to be below the planes when they're in V-stall or, whatnot, so or the Harriers as they're
Uh-huh.
winding and coming over your head. It's pretty fascinating, so
Uh-huh.
well, I've enjoyed this
I'm
conversation.
actually,
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
yeah, always good. I met a woman here recently. She's 80 now, but her husband was an F4 pilot in the Marine Corps. Um, and then she worked, on different aircraft platform programs and whatnot. Spent a lot of time in the Harrier world, and I don't know. I guess I didn't have a whole lot more to
Yeah.
add to that, but
That's a
it's
neat
just so
point.
interesting hearing from somebody, with who's at that point in her life. She's been, I think her husband retired from the Marine Corps, so she just lived that married to a Marine, lifestyle for so long.
Yeah.
And then her daughter actually wrote the article that I think is on LinkedIn called "Growing Up Semper Fi," and basically
Okay.
just how growing up just moving constantly. It sounded like they were moving them around a whole lot more frequently than people typically get moved around these
Mhm.
days.
Okay.
Usually a pilot is going to be with a squadron these days for like, I know stuff changes from coast to coast, like East Coast and West Coast do things differently than we did in Hawaii. But usually you're going to be at a squadron for like a year and a half. Um, Whereas like they were moving like more than once a year at times. But
Wow.
yeah, it was
That's
a cool perspective of how she learned resilience and flexibility and being able to meet and connect with new people and all that stuff. But
yeah.
just meeting people with aviation experience, aviation world experience, this is the coolest thing because um, I don't know. There's just something very uniquely different about it. Really, I would say versus other spheres in the world.
Yeah, I like the aviation mechanic tribe. I like the people I meet, in general, like the aviation tribe overall. I just really enjoy talking to everyone from the pilots to the mechanics to I mean, I like the mechanics a lot. I end up going back into mechanic language when I talk to prior mechanics or crew chiefs,
Hmm.
you know? Um, but overall, the aviation world is pretty neat. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I love everyone that I meet, and it just seems like it's a close-knit tribe, but I think within it, people can be welcoming, and once you get out of the actual being, like, inside of it, when you're it's a little different, you're kinda hard on each other, but once everyone gets kind of removed from it, I think humanity comes back in, and you're like, "Oh, remember that, remember this," and you kinda wear it
Hmm.
differently, and it feels nice. And I really like being able to know, like, my experience way back in, you know, 1998. Well, yeah, 98 to '02, like, I'm here talking to you, and we have a very similar, like, mindset on things, and that's what I love. I love the fact that, so much time has passed, but those years imprinted upon me something that I can now talk with and share with others who were a part of the same thing, and
Hmm.
matter the airframe, it matters, like, the overall subject matter and the I don't know, just the culture that was there, and it's fun to talk to people and share our stories and see where we all meet up and match up, in those different areas, no matter what plane we worked on, so,
Hmm.
yeah, it's cool. I love it. I'm appreciative
Yeah,
now more than I
absolutely.
ever have been, so but good
Yeah,
deal.
it seems that that tends to happen for people.
Yeah.
Um, I think now, with the benefit of social media, how so many of us are connecting and talking about this and all that is that, now you got these memes too saying, I used to be cool, or stickers saying, I used to be cool, with somebody, a little character wearing a cranial or a flight helmet or something like that.
Uh,
Um, and yeah, I think it carries typically a different level of humility in people because I think when somebody truly gets it in aviation, they realize how much of a team effort it is. If you think of, say, professional athletes, they obviously do amazing things, but
mhm.
their career is about them.
Yeah, correct.
Especially when you're not on a team doing something, it's all about you. Whereas, like, if you have that attitude in aviation, it's like, uh,
You and I need to
it's going to be a hard life for that person. Like, other people are just going to be like, not a good guy or gal to work with, or whatever it is, and um,
you
whereas
get you get kicked out pretty
especially
you get kicked to the curb pretty quick. Like, you either learn to not be that way or you're gone.
right, especially when you're working on such a big aircraft as well, and it does require so many people not just to maintain it, but to actually fly it as well.
Mhm.
You have to be able to rely on other people, um, connect with them. I think it teaches us more too indirectly about psychology because you've got to recognize, okay, you know, where is this person at in reality versus where do they think they're at versus where they're actually at.
Yeah.
Do they have the level of integrity and sort of clarity of what they're doing in order to communicate things, whereas like I find myself when now that I'm working around people of varying levels of experience, and some people who are just they never were in the military, they're just
Mhm.
civilians coming over to work on military aircraft. I like the people who are quick to say, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, they understand where their skill set or where their understanding runs out, and they'll just say like, I don't, I don't get this next thing, or I'm not familiar enough, or whatever. I need some help on this, because then you realize that, okay, cool, this person's never going to pretend to me that they know something, because arguably the pretense of knowledge and acting on the pretense of knowledge in aviation, that's one of the things that gets people killed, whether you're a mechanic, avionics, crew chief, pilot, whatever it is when people just pretend. And it's like, one moment of pretending might put an aircraft into the ground.
Yeah.
Um,
You
so that's,
you're
again, that humility is such a big thing.
yeah, you gotta stop. You're gonna be humbled one way or another. Either you fucked up really bad and you endangered people's lives and now you're getting legal action against you or whatever, or you're gonna have the guys in the shop humble you and you're gonna grow up and figure it out. And, I've been on the receiving end of that and I've had to figure that out because I didn't know. And we always say, well, I feel like people are like, oh man, I want to know everything. But that's not, you can't know everything until you've experienced it. And I think coming in as a young person in the military, it's very easy to have this ego, like I'm a badass because I'm working on this jet. And I've heard, other podcasters who are like in special ops say, yeah, we thought we were badasses coming out of buds until we realized, like, we get to an actual unit and they're like, who the hell are you? Like, you've never gone to war. You don't know what it's like. And you have to be willing to go through that humbling and go through the spot of, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And somebody's going to tell you, and you either figure your shit out or you're going to be really on the shit end of the stick or they'll just kick you out and you'll be picking up cigarette butts and washing airplanes for your whole career. They're not gonna keep
Uh-huh.
you there, and that's painful. Washing airplanes sucks. I don't know. Well, washing the B-1 sucks, let's just be real, and
Uh-huh.
dead of winter, washing an airplane is not fun, and so, there's just ways of learning how to grow up and ways of learning, like, you got to be willing to say, "I don't know." You have to be, because people already know
Uh-huh.
that you don't know. They already know it. And if you think you know and they're like, "No, you don't," you gotta fix that disconnect real fast. So, I guess I
Uh-huh.
would say for you in the civilian world, it's it m I mean, do people tend to think that they don't have to say, "I don't know," or I mean, I don't know. I feel like in the military, we kinda get away more with making sure people understand there's consequences for being stupid because you can't just quit the next day. But civilian world's a little
Right.
different on that. So
Hmm. The thing that I see with people with prior military experience, prior military aviation experience, is they are quicker to state their limitations when they do need some help,
okay.
versus the civilian side. I'm not going to try to say anything that is overly calling anybody out or something like that, but I see more hesitance to humbly say, I don't know
Mm,
what I'm doing, or hey, dude, you're way better at me than this thing.
yeah.
Show me what you know about this. Whereas, looking back to the people who I've always looked up to in this world, I wanted to absorb all of the skill they had, all of the knowledge they had, and just be around those people. A couple of my buddies, Sam and George, that I worked with on the depot out in on Coronado, it was like I could go to them about anything,
Mhm.
and they either knew the answer or they knew they knew where to find the answer, because some of the answers in the manuals or whatever, it takes some digging, in order to find this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. That's how you gain trust with people too, is when you're like, hey, look, show me how to do this, show me a better way, whatever it is. How do you do this thing?
Mhm.
Because I think some people think that being a mechanic or whatever is just, oh, you just put the nut and the bolt on and tighten it up. It's like,
Yeah,
well, if
nope.
you can barely get your hands into the area and you've got to be, bent over backwards, and that's the only way to do it, or
Yeah.
upside down doing something like that. They have it. This is not a car that you put up on a lift, and and all that. It's
Yeah, you
there are
can't.
areas where it's like, how the hell did engineers even design, this to where it's this difficult to work on? Like, the amount of times that 53 mechanics are cursing the engineers who set things up in certain ways. Like, even looking at the Kilo these days, as much as they made stuff easier, learning from, the Echo and the previous versions of the 53, still sometimes it's like, why didn't they look at the Echo and say, okay, that's a really tough job to do. Let's make it easier on this one. Whereas, funny enough, a guy I used to know in San Diego, he was an engineer for a long time, working with the Navy, and he said that he would ask every engineer, um, applying for a job, do you change your own oil on your car? And he said that
Wow.
was the biggest indicator that he had, uh, in an interview, to see if they were going to be worth a shit, once they got hired. And he said, yeah, typically the people who didn't change their oil on their car or didn't know how to do it weren't going to pan out very well. And I think that real world hands on, being able to look at something and understand the consequences, the down the road circumstances of how they're laying something out, that's
Yeah.
such a critical and overlooked detail. And um, I asked, a buddy that I work with. He's a skid guy, former,
Mhm.
Cobra and Huey mechanic, who I work with now. He was, doing some service on my vehicle, only because I don't want to do a lot of work on my vehicle anymore. But I was like, what brands of cars do you look at that seem like they're really poorly engineered? And
Huh.
very quickly, he was like, oh, this and that brand, they'll lay this stuff out, and it's like overly complicated.
Yeah.
For example, I've worked on, some Bobcat equipment, like the brand Bobcat, the heavy equipment
Yeah, yeah,
company.
yeah.
And I'm just looking at stuff sometimes, and it's like, why the hell did they do it this way? Like, this is ridiculous. And then, you look at other companies. Like, I guess I'm spoiled by working on, Toyotas, for so many years, to where most of the time the stuff is pretty well laid out. Like, the engineers and the people who put stuff together, I think that, they worked hand in hand, instead
Mhm.
of just like, here it is, figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, and having worked on exotic cars, when you have to remove an engine out of a Ferrari in order to change the serpentine belt on it. It's like, does it really have to be that hard to change a
No.
belt on this car to where you have to pull the engine out of it? And it's just like, whatever. I guess if and buyer beware, if you're going to buy a Ferrari or any kind of an exotic car or something like that,
You better have
and
money
I'm
to
not the only one to say it, but
yeah,
you better have money to service that damn thing, because buying the car is maybe half of what you're going to pay for.
yeah, that's not okay. And I think sometimes they do that because they know I don't know what they think. I'm not a car engineer, but it's stupid. The way I feel is, like, you guys know you're gonna take all my money and you want it to be that way. Like, I just had recently, one of the, knock sensors on my Tacoma go out because a mouse or a rat ate through the wiring, and I thought I could do it myself until I got the price tag. Like, I called around and I was like, "Oh, this should only be maybe like 500 bucks, 1,000." When I got the $4,000 price tag, I said, "What?" And then I realized you gotta pull the engine apart to get to the knock sensors. And that's when I realized I can't do it myself because the price tag was so big. But that's the only one
Uh-huh.
where even the mechanic was like, Toyota did not think this one out. Like, you've got to pull out the exhaust manifold and you gotta take out some, the coolant lines and you gotta do this and that and the other. I was like, "No, this is stupid. The wiring the thing's this big," but it monitors the engine
Uh-huh.
thing, and from there, you have the transmission, and then from you have all these other things that operate from the, um the way it distributes the gas to, how the engine's working with it. Like, it wouldn't even shift into upper gears because of this little wiring harness being gone, and I was like, "Good grief." Thankfully, insurance paid for it, but that's one of the things where I know on the B1s the same way, we'd just be cursing the engineers, like, what are you thinking?" Like, thankfully, like, my elbows are, like, kind of disjointed, so I can put my elbow in and turn it so it flattens while my wrist is turning, and so they always have me working on certain parts because I could get up inside and backwards, and nobody can twist their elbow weird like I could've, so I got stuck on doing the bolts behind things that we couldn't reach, and that was just weird, but
Uh-huh.
that's when you learn, like, "Oh, it's nice to have a small little arm and a little elbow, and then pop it up in through there," you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, all the good things, and that's what I think is neat overall about mechanics, is we learn how to troubleshoot and we learn how to fix around the problem that no one else knows how to fix it. Because you don't have an answer that the jet just has to stay broke. It's like, "Okay, well, what are you gonna do about it?" "Well, I don't know what we're gonna do."
Uh-huh.
"Well, you better freaking figure it out because the jet needs to fly." And then you gotta figure out how
Uh-huh.
to go get the parts that you don't have, and you gotta figure out how to make the tools work that you may not have or you do have, or there's a lot of problem solving in mechanical work that people don't realize, and aviation
Uh-huh.
mechanic aviation mechanical work is so complicated. And like you said, it's not just one thing because you gotta rig it, then, you have to dump the systems, and you gotta refill them back up, so you have to call other people out to refill the nitrogen or you gotta call this person out for that, and one little part can take 2 shifts, or so it's not as simple, just go out there and change a gasket or change this. You gotta go out there and change some sort of valve or some sort of actuator. Oh, well, are we gonna have to bring a crane out and take the stab off to get to the horizontal
Right.
stabilizers? Oh, now we gotta turn the system on and split the stab so we can get to 2 bolts that are underneath it. Well, that means you gotta bring AR in there, and then it's just long. It's a lot. But working out there around those planes on that level, you learn you gotta fix it, and you gotta do it right, because the cost of not doing it right puts everybody out, not to mention lives. So, the last thing everybody's grumpy out there for a reason, and I kinda I think that's what we touched on the last podcast with John. It's like, there's a reason why people are irritable and grumpy all the time, because there's just constant, like, backfill, and you gotta go back, and you gotta deal with this person, that person, and you're just like there's never an easy day on the flight line. Actually, if it is, you're like, "Something's coming." If there's an easy day, there's something's coming.
Right.
We're gonna pay the price, so,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, it's good stuff. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for my time in that broke a lot of the bad habits out of me that I'm still figuring out little by little, like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got my ass handed to me there and there and there, because now I'm out in the real world." And that experience that, like you're saying with where you're at now, you don't have guys maybe saying, "Hey, I don't know what's going on." They just know, "I'm just not gonna say anything, but I don't know what I'm doing." But
Uh-huh.
I guess they don't have the impetus to change as much as you would in the military. You're like, "Yeah, I don't need paperwork. I don't need to crash a jet. I'm not gonna have I can't go down and hire an attorney if I did something wrong." Like, it's never gonna work out in my favor in the military if things go really wrong. So,
Uh-huh.
anyways.
That's an interesting point too. If you think that typically I've probably said this to a dozen people before or whatever, but in the medical world, they've got medical malpractice insurance and stuff
Mm,
like that. Say a surgeon messes up or whatever it is. I was actually on a jury probably 18 or 20 years ago too, a medical malpractice type of thing. And it's like, okay, well, they have medical malpractice insurance, but in aviation,
mm-mm.
you're either, if you're on the aircraft and you did something wrong, either maintenance wise or during a flight or whatever, potentially that's your life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you run the risk of going to prison. There is no, oh, yeah, insurance is going to cover it.
Yeah.
Um,
Or I had a bad
so
day.
it's just, that,
Yeah.
yeah, that level of accountability is, that's just always, always something that stuck with me. And the more that I see in the civilian world, and like arguably that accountability gets stamped into you. It's part of
Mhm.
your nervous system, I believe, um, because you've just operated at that level for years, and you
It's
can't blame people who haven't understood it. But at the same time, I think that it's on us to not expect of other people that they can even identify that level of accountability. So um, I've struggled with that for many years,
yeah,
big time.
I think I do too, because I know where, like, I make mistakes, and then I'm hard on myself if I make a mistake, but I'm also hard on others, and, you know, I was talking to a fellow photographer the other day at lunch, and I was talking about drones, and I'm very aware when I get that drone up in the air. Just because it goes up, I'm already scanning the air, like, what plane is coming around? Because we can fly the drones over the ocean here, and the other day I realized, well, everybody coming down from Jacksonville, like, from New River, they fly right over the beach, and my drone can fly over the beach, and there's no restricted air, and I don't like that. I don't like the thought of my drone going through an airplane, and mm,
Uh-huh.
people don't realize that. They don't think about it. They're like, "Oh, just fly my drone." Like, no, I flew it over by the hospital one day. There was no restrictions, and I heard a helicopter, and I thought, "No, this is not okay. This is not okay that I can run my drone right up into a helicopter." And
Uh-huh.
everybody's like, "Well, it's just a little drone." I'm like, You understand? That's a big deal if it goes through a plane. It's not just a little drone, So being aware, even in my job, when I'm flying that drone, whether you have a license or not, like I have a license for it, but I don't think they teach that kind of level of accountability, of being aware of the damage that that drone can do to an actual airplane. It might be tiny, but it'll take something out? So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't know. That just made me think of that, of how what you're saying applies in my day-to-day job, with aviation, even though I may or may not be around it a lot. Um, but the general public, I think they just think, "Oh, well, I can fly this drone. It should be okay." I'm like, "Yeah, but just because the phone doesn't tell you not to fly your drone, like the DJI's map doesn't restrict it, doesn't mean you can't. You should be aware of your surroundings, like what's flying around you." And a funny story, I had one of the birds chase my drone almost clean out of the sky one day at the beach. I was like, "You little turd." He was, like, chasing my drone straight up because I was trying to get away from him. And I was like, "Oh my god, like, this bird's gonna take my drone out." So, mechanical birds can't really chase my drone the same way, but I got the lesson. I needed to stay away from their breeding their nesting area because they're gonna take my drone.
Uh-huh.
So, anyway, a little side shot there, but yeah, it is accountability, and learning how to say, "I don't know," is probably the best thing you could ever do. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like
Yeah,
it.
and it's an easy way to gain the trust of the people who are working around you, because it's like, okay, cool. There's not ever going to be somebody trying to hide something. They're just going to come to me or whoever, you know, and just say, "Hey, I need help." And then you just establish a better, cohesive team with that. So, it's good
Yeah,
stuff.
it is good. Awesome. Well, cool. I know you're on a little
All right, Laura. Well, thanks for
time, so
yep. Yeah, thanks for joining me.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
looking forward to doing it again soon.
Me too. Have a good evening.
All right. Yep, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.